call the officers from the NBN Co to the table. I see you up the back. Yeah. We did have you down as appearing by teleconference, so I have to say when I saw you come and sit down, I was like, oh, there we go.
I'll do it again. Yep. Do you want to do anything else? Okay.
Well, what more fun could you have than sitting in Canberra for hours on end, waiting to speak to a bunch of senators? That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, Mr. Rue, as Chief Executive Officer, would you care to make an opening statement?
Well, I have an opening statement, but Chair, would you like me to we've sent it to the Secretary. Would you like me just to...
Do you want to give us the kind of elevator pitch?
Yeah, it's not long. It'll...
Yeah.
Of course.
No, I think that's great. It gives us it's a nice way to give us some context.
I'm very happy to do so. So again, good evening. It's honestly good to be back with you again and not on video. So I've got with me here to my right Gavin Williams, who's our Chief Development Officer for Regional and Remote as well. So I will honestly be brief. Let me start with our fiscal 23 financial results, which saw a total revenue of $5.27 billion and total earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortisation of $3.59 billion. This means we met all the financial targets the company set itself for the year. I want to take a moment also to mention the publication of our 2024 corporate plan, which sets out expected revenue of between 5.3 and 5.5 billion, which is a modest increase on this year, with the projected EBITDA of between 3.7 billion and 3.9 billion. This plan reflects NBN's focus on upgrading and improving the network through investments in new technologies, such as XGS-PON over fibre to the premise, which enables equal download and upload capabilities, and distributed access architecture over our cable network, which will enable NBN to continue to meet what we believe will be a strong future demand for data and enable innovation for households and businesses as they access new applications such as smart homes, virtual reality and generative AI. We've also been very successful in our debt-raising efforts, recently securing $2 billion in the US markets. This means we are well on track to repay the remaining $5.5 billion Commonwealth loan by June next year, and demonstrates the confidence of debt investors in the company. Today, there are just under 8.6 million homes and businesses connected to our network and more than 12 million premises ready to connect. Of the 12 million ready to connect, we are on track to achieve our target of having 75% of the fixed line footprint being close to gigabit capable by the end of 2023. We are seeing positive momentum in the demand for Fibre Connect orders, which are recently averaging over 5,000 orders a week, with more retailers now offering fibre services and more areas being made ready to order a full fibre upgrade. This growth in orders demonstrates strong demand for fibre exists when upgrades are actively promoted to customers. With an average network availability of around 99.96%, it means that customer experience has never been better across the NBN network, with far fewer outages due to faults. We are seeing this translate into a continuing downward trend in complaints to the Telecommunication Industry Ombudsman, or TIO. In the 2022-23 annual report, the TIO noted complaints for services over the NBN network regarding faulty connections were down 35% compared to the same period last year. NBN is always looking to build more capacity and reliability into its network, including in regional Australia. Across fiscal 23, NBN's fixed wireless and satellite upgrade program lifted the capacity on the fixed wireless network by more than 50%. We are also well on our way to enabling around 120,000 customers in previously satellite-only areas to access our fixed wireless network for the first time, with 28,000 premises already migrated. This migration has allowed us to offer improved services for our satellite customers, And in June, we launched our first Sky Muster Plus plan that offers uncapped data, which is subject to fair use policy and shaping, along with wholesale burst speeds of up to 100 megabits per second. This new product is hugely popular, with more than 25% of our satellite customers now using it. This has been a fantastic result, with some of NBN's key milestones being achieved months ahead of schedule. In the case of satellite, we've started exploring options for the future, and in June 23 we released a request for information to a number of low Earth orbit, or as we would say, LEO, satellite operators. At present, we are considering the responses we received to our request. We are planning for the future needs of regional Australia, while continuing to deliver improved and affordable services over the NBN Sky Muster satellite network. On the 17th of October 23, we achieved a landmark outcome for the entire industry with the ACCC's acceptance of NBN's Special Access Undertaking, or SAU. The SAU will deliver a new approach to wholesale pricing, supporting faster internet speeds, greater data demand and improved cost certainty and regulatory predictability for retailers and customers. We're on place to have new pricing in place by the 1st of December this year. Accordingly, by the end of this year, we will eliminate CVC or capacity charges from our highest speed tiers, which offer wholesale download speeds from 100 megabits per second to close to 1 gigabit per second. This will deliver greater cost certainty to retailers and long-term cost savings for customers than would otherwise be the case under our current wholesale price structure, given the trend for data growth. The SAU will also support NBN by affording reasonable opportunity for NBN to generate and achieve sufficient revenues to invest in our network so that we can keep delivering for all Australians. We've also been conducting a parallel industry consultation on the revised wholesale pricing in a new wholesale broadband agreement called WBA5. Executable agreements were issued to our retail service providers on the 9th of October with a view to reflecting the SAU variation with our new products, wholesale prices and non-price terms coming into effect from the 1st of December 23, as I stated earlier. So, Chair, thank you. Gavin and I are happy to take your questions, and thank you for taking my statement.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Senator Pocock.
Chair, thanks for your time tonight. I know we've covered this at previous estimates. I was keen to follow up when it comes to the rollout in the ACT. My understanding is the nationwide target for gigabit-capable premises is 90%, but the target in the ACT is 60%. Is that correct?
90%, yes, and our original target for the ACT was 57 or 58%, from memory, not quite 60.
It was 57%. Is it still 57 or 58%?
Well, the challenge we're having in the ACT, as I think we've explained in previous hearings, Senator, is that the cost of building in the ACT is expensive, and the reason is because there's a lot of backyard. Sorry, I know you know this. There's a lot of backyard network we've got to build. We've got to use poles that is provided by the energy operator, Evo Energy, in the ACT, and they are proving to be actually they need work on those poles for us to be able to put our additional infrastructure on them. So when we've looked at the cost of building out in the ACT, unfortunately there are premises elsewhere in the country that is more cost effective for us to build to. So unless there's a change in the cost of building that rollout, we're probably more looking now at 50% rather than 50, yeah.
So 90% elsewhere, 50 in the ACT because of those issues?
It'll be 90%, yes, that's correct. Now, there's the other issue in the ACT is that there was never a Foxtel cable network built in the ACT, so there was more fibre to the node premises built in the ACT as a result. So therefore more to do, if you like, to get to 90%. So we're certainly will get to 50%, but unless those costs, basically, or our cost of building comes down, we're now looking at 50%. So it's about 17,000 premises that's impacted.
Okay, wow, 50%. In previous estimates you've talked about, I think it was Victoria doing a deal with the NBN to get it to essentially bridge that gap for premises that aren't, I guess, viable under your model or don't make sense.
Yeah.
Evo Energy is partly owned by the ACT government.
Yes, it's 50% ACT and 50% AGL, I believe.
Is there discussions about a deal to get more Canberrans fibre to the premises?
You've also asked me many times about discussions with the Chief Minister. So I did actually meet the Chief Minister in, I think it was August, and explain to him the challenges in the ACT. Evo Energy, look, I can't talk for them, but they would have to invest earlier than they would normally do, I guess, to upgrade those poles. So the question would be whether there would be additional funding coming from the ACT government. Now, you talked about the Victorian arrangements. September 2020, we set up a fund, a $300 million investment fund to co-invest with states and territories. And what that basically does is enables a state to contribute to the cost of infrastructure build where we otherwise would not have done it because we're borrowing so much money. And as a GBE, we've got to have a commercial return. So it is available to the ACT government. Not only my discussions with the Chief Minister, but my office have followed up with his office since. They've talked about the areas that is impacted, and it's really in their hands if they want to come back to us and discuss co-funding.
Thank you. Was that your first meeting with the Chief Minister?
No, it was my second meeting. I met with him, you stretch my memory, but I'm going to say 2 years earlier than that. It might have been 18 months, but it's my second meeting with him.
Thank you. I had, in talking about NBN with someone, they put the question to me, and I'm relaying this to you now. Has NBN Co ever approached TPG about acquiring their VDSL network constructed by Transact? They believe that this would significantly increase the number of NBN-connected dwellings in the ACT with marginal civil engineering costs. Does that sound right?
TPG have a business called Transact. I'm not aware of any discussions with TPG about NBN acquiring Transact. I doubt that would be arrangements that would be permitted anyway through the regulator, to be honest with you. It is actually quite expensive generally for us to ingest another network into our network. It's quite complicated with IT and so on, but it's not something that's on the agenda. And for us, it's about how do we upgrade our network and how do we continue to provide services. As I said in my opening statement, data is going to continue to grow.
Great, thank you. And just finally, I was keen to follow up on an answer to a question on notice, and I might just read it out.
Sure.
The answer comes, due to the absence of an existing HFC network and the resulting need to build more fibre to the node, the ACT has a relatively high proportion of fibre to the node, approximately 60%, 128,000 premises.
Yep.
You say approximately 50,000 of these FTTN premises in the ACT are expected to be upgraded under the full fibre upgrade program. I'm wondering what will happen to the remaining 78,000. How will they be made gigabit capable?
Yeah, so we're operating under existing government policy, which is to get to 90% gig capable. Any investment beyond that would require effectively funding into NBN, and that becomes a question for the government rather than for me, I'm afraid. For me, my job is to execute the policy rather than to develop the policy. But to get to more than 50 or 57%, it would require the company, i.e. NBN, to receive funding from a government policy or from the ACT government, which is presumably quite difficult from the ACT government. But it would require government policy to say that they want to get to more gig-capable premises than the 90%.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I've got a few questions I'll put on notice, which is a bit more detail. But
yeah,
thank
sure.
You. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
So
Good evening.
Good evening.
We heard earlier from the Bureau of Meteorology, it looks like the summer will be hot and dry, and
Yeah.
we've already seen a number of bushfires.
Yeah.
Can you provide an update on how NBN is preparing your network for bushfire season?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I might ask. Do you mind answering that?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Senator. So, I mean, we've talked in Senate hearings before about some of the assets that we have in place in terms of redundant network equipment. So these are essentially devices that we call network on wheels that we can ship in. And I don't think maybe I'll emphasise that. I mean, I think the key behind the question is what are we doing differently this year and what have we learned from previous natural disasters? And I'd characterise our work in terms of what we do for network preparedness, what we do in partnerships with relevant agencies and what we do in education. As I implied, we always seek to learn from previous disaster seasons and do a better job next time. This season, it's the first season that we're fully equipped with our disaster recovery centres under the Strengthening Telecommunications and Natural Disasters. We're fully equipped on our program to roll out hybrid power cubes to high-value fixed wireless nodes. So these are redundant power systems that have diesel generators, solar power and big batteries. Because, of course, in many disaster situations, reliable access to power is the key thing that determines whether the networks are up, as opposed to physical damage for infrastructure. So those assets, over the last year, we've deployed them and we take account of where we see threat risk and in terms of some of our mobile assets to stage them ahead of the season. Of course, in relation to the specifics of this season, we're stepping up our activities to clean up environmental protection zones around our physical assets, particularly our fixed wireless towers. So we do multiple site visits. We work with relevant grading agencies to understand bushfire threat and take vegetation out even on access roads so that the fireys can get access. We'll take pictures and share those with the emergency responders as well. So that's all the work on the network. In terms of partnerships, you mentioned the Bureau. We've stepped up our engagement with the Bureau. We now have some access to dedicated resource to channel very specific forecast information to us to really tune our response. And very importantly too, our relationships with power companies continues to improve. In fact, we're taking a leadership role in establishing machine-machine interfaces so that power outages can be really well understood on a granular and immediate level rather than relying, for example, on phone calls and such things. And then finally, in terms of education, internally we train up our emergency liaison officers. So we've got many emergency liaison officers that work from anywhere from the federal agencies through to local response agencies. That education process flows through to local emergency groups. In fact, I recently participated in a group with Telstra and Regional Tech Hub down in southwest Victoria, meeting the local CFAs and emergency response groups, so making sure that there was a broad understanding. That was part of a national program, broad understanding of what of each of us puts in place for the disaster season and make sure that we can sort of tighten up those links with those agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Just aside from the assets that you've just mentioned, are there any other backup capabilities that you have to support communities and emergency personnel during those natural disasters? Yes,
I mentioned that. So the strength we have. Satellite communication systems in disaster recovery centres. So there's over 1,000 in place, but they include community evacuation centres and, if you like, sort of fiery hubs, so that directly in support of the emergency responders. A range of mobile assets from network on wheels that can take the place of an exchange if equipment is burnt down, and we have used those in the past. If a fixed wireless tower is inoperable, we can wheel in a tower on wheels and pump up the mast and support temporary services. And we have muster vehicles crewed by our community engagement professionals that can wheel out and provide communication backup, whether that's through direct communication from the vehicle or from portable flyaway kits. And those have been used very effectively in the past in Lismore floods and multiple events over the last few years.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to begin by asking about the special access undertaking, which recently was approved by the ACCC. Yeah. So I understand that included in your plan, the wholesale price of 50 megabits of the 50 megabit plan will rise, and there will be a reduction in the 100 meg plan. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And on the 25 meg plan, it's the case that while you have provided a discount on the flat rate, you've also removed most of the free component of the usage charge, and that retailers will now have to pay more for that. Is that correct?
No. Retailers will pay less on the 25.5 on average.
Well, that doesn't seem to add up, Mr. Rowe, because just in the last couple of days, Aussie Broadband has put up its price for the 20 meg plan by $6 a month, and as reported in ComStage just yesterday, it's also increased the price of its 12 and 50 meg plans by $6 a month, with the popular 50 meg plan jumping from $79 to $85 a month. So this doesn't look good news at all for...
But Senator, that's a decision that one of our retailers has made on a retail basis. You asked me about, excuse me, about the cost. So you asked me about the cost to the retailers of our various price plans. You're quite correct. The 100 plan will come down by between 1% and 2% on average. The 50 plan the cost to retailers on average will rise about 2%, and the 25.5 plan, the cost to retailers will reduce. What any individual retailer will do is up to them in terms of their retail prices.
So it seems that those at the lower end are being hit already by increases even before there's been appropriate renegotiation or negotiation of agreements between the NBN and the retail providers?
No, well, again, if you're asking me about retail prices, you need to ask the retailers. In terms of our input costs, if you like, into retailers, which drives clearly some of their pricing decisions, we were very conscious during the long discussion with industry and with regulators as to a long-term special access undertaking around the low end and the low speed end. So what you've seen is a significant reduction in the price of voice-only plans. You see a reduction in the price of the average cost to the industry of 12.1 and the average cost to the industry of 25.5. Both will reduce. If I could just also add... But,
sorry, Mr. Rowe, if I can just cut in here, because I'm just going to ask you to keep your answers reasonably brief.
Sure.
But just going to my point about the retailers and the wholesale price.
Yep.
At the end of the day, the only cost that matters for consumers is what they're charged by their retail provider.
Yeah, that's correct.
Retailers need to make a margin, which is a margin on top of what they pay to the NBN. The Minister in her media release promised a positive outcome for households and that this was great news for consumers. Now, how can the government make that sort of commitment when we've just seen prices go up? Barely the ink is dry on this announcement.
Well, again, Senator, I can only talk to the input costs that NBN has into the industry. I know you want my answer short, so I won't talk about other things we're doing to help retailers with input costs, but specifically on the SAU, the ACCC determined that the SAU is in the best long-term interest of consumers. In terms of the lower end, we not only do we have a low-income forum and that we're assisting the government on the school broadband initiative, but also the average cost to the industry of the 12 and 25 speed plans actually reduces. Now, I talk about average cost of the industry because every retailer has a different structure of users and a different profile of how much data they use. But on average, the input cost to retailers of both 12 plans and 25/5 plans reduces. Now, what retailers choose to do in the market is a decision for retailers based on their own strategies. What I can say
but
is...
Can I just on that point?
Yep.
The wholesale price is coming down on the 25 meg plan, and yet the retail price, at least in the case of Aussie Broadband, is going up. So can I ask you to respond to the commitment by the government that this is good news for consumers? Because the outcome, Mr. Rowe, is very, very poor for consumers to see this sort of increase already.
Well, again, I can't comment about, and you can understand it's not. I should not comment about any individual, particularly a listed company's decision.
Of course you can.
No, I can't talk about a listed company's decision. But what I can tell you is that it's up to them as to their retail prices.
But the
reason why it's good news for consumers is because this SAU, as I call it, provides cost certainty for retailers. It provides, as I said, the ACCC is determined in the long-term interests of consumers. It enables us to continue to invest in the network, provide better services over time, which is what people will need, provide more reliability, and it's an absolutely excellent outcome for both the industry and for consumers. But what a retailer chooses to do, I'm sorry, but you need to ask them about their pricing. Well, I would put to you,
though, you do need to care about retail prices. I understand that you don't have control over it. I totally appreciate that. Yeah. But the take-up of retail plans is critical to the viability and success of the NBN.
Absolutely.
So, for instance, if I look at, I've asked you about Starlink before. Starlink is going gangbusters. No one I know in regional Australia, no farm, no big agribusiness is signing up to Sky Muster.
Well, I can ask Mr. Williams.
And I'm saying that in general terms. That's the word on the street, that people generally are flocking to Starlink in droves. So caring about the retail price is really important.
No, I do care about the retail price, Senator, but you're asking me a question about something that I don't control, and it's one specific retailer. Well, if you want Mr. Williams to comment on Starlink,
I'd love to talk about that in a minute, sure. But just on the SAU and the pricing.
What I'm saying to you is that that the average cost to industry for the 12 and the 25 actually falls. In fact, I have been on the public record, Senator, as saying that our average revenue per user, which is another way to say the average cost of the industry, won't rise this year from the SAU. So this year, our input costs to the industry is not rising this year.
I guess what is concerning about what we've seen already within a very, very short period of time are these cost increases are hitting perhaps those in lower incomes who can least afford this sort of increase at this time.
So my job, and as part of I say my job, I mean the company's job, I'm sorry to personalise, but the company's job is, as we were discussing this with industry and with the ACCC, was to ensure that we were very conscious of that, and we were, and that is why our voice-only product, our 12-1 product, our 25 product, actually all the average cost of the industry reduces. Now, and that is why we also championed the chairing that we do of the low-income forum, and why we supported the government on both Indigenous communities and in the school broadband scheme, school student broadband scheme. So Senator, what I can do is ensure that, and sorry, finally, to repeat myself, the ACCC are satisfied that the pricing and service standards on the long-term interests of consumers. Again, what retailers do, Senator, you need to ask them individually. Finally, can I just say...
Well, how do you then control a retailer from just ratcheting up the cost then?
Because the industry... I'll tell you why. Because the industry is extremely competitive. There are multiple retailers in the industry. There are multiple opportunities for consumers to go and shop around. And again, I'd encourage consumers to do that. It is a very intensely competitive industry. That was one of the reasons NBN was established, actually, was to create intensive retail competition. So the competition in the marketplace, Senator, is the way that that gets controlled. My job is to ensure I provide great services. We have a great relationship with retailers. We continue to assist them in taking costs out of their business and the industry, and that, again, that our pricing structure reflects both a protection at the lower end and also provides incentive for retailers to sell the higher speeds, which is what people are going to want more and more.
Last question in this
That's
block,
why it's in the
Chair.
long-term interest of consumers and good for consumers.
So are you concerned that the price increases we've seen with Aussie Broadband are going to ricochet throughout the market?
Well, I don't think Senator, I don't think there's collusion in the market. What I think
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying, are you concerned that this is going to be the beginning of price increases across the board, leaving Australians worse off, particularly those who are really struggling to pay the bills at the moment?
I think, Senator, that...
Before you answer this question,
yeah, sure.
Mr. Rowe, can I just please make the point that I don't believe that you're responsible for private retailers' pricing policy. Is that correct?
Well, I am saying that,
just ask.
No, I'm not.
I think Mr. Rowe's big enough and tough enough
No,
to...
I'm not.
It's not about that. It's just we're going on this...
Well, he doesn't need direction from you, Chair.
rabbit holes.
And well, I'm
not.
I'm very keen on the rabbit hole, Chair, so I don't need your guidance. So I have the call, so I'll just ask Mr. Rowe if you could answer the question.
We can change that quite swiftly if you'd like. You're past your 10 minutes. I'm happy to let you go.
Mr. Rowe could ask you to answer that question.
So I'm not responsible for retail prices.
No, but my question is...
No, and I'm not willing to comment on individual companies' policies. But what I think you'll see is ongoing competition in the marketplace, Senator, and I think that, as I said, where there is demand for services, I think retailers will find a way to meet that demand, and I think that's what you'll see. And that is why... at the end of the day, Senator, this SAU discussion was all about balancing lots of things, balancing the need for NBN to be able to continue to invest, balancing the sustainability of the industry, balancing predictability for consumers and retailers, and ensuring that there was an incentive for retailers to sell both at the high speeds and incentive for retailers to continue to sell at the 12 and 25 speeds at an affordable level, Senator. Now, let's see how the market works all that out.
I'll come back, Chair, because I've got some more questions.
No, everyone else is finished, Senator.
Oh, okay. Terrific.
We're just waiting for you.
Well, I might hand over to Senator Davey.
Question would be nice.
And maybe not reflect on my questions would be good.
Senator Davey, over to you.
I have a few questions, and I think one of the problems, and I understand where Senator Henderson's concerns are, because Aussie Broadband specifically said in their announcement of the price rises that it was due to the SAU. So maybe it's their messaging is
well, all I can tell you is that the input cost to the industry is not rising this financial year, and as I said, our average revenue per user won't grow, and that's another way of saying the average cost to the industry won't increase. The average cost across the industry. Not only that, but in future years, our price rises is capped at a weighted average price cap, as it's called, at no more than CPI. So, again, you'd have to ask individual retailers that, excuse me the question, but...
So potentially their public statement was slightly taking advantage of your announcement about SAUs and making a link that isn't yet in place, but...
I can't comment on
that. No, you can't. You mentioned the school broadband initiative.
Yeah.
Kind of misnamed because it's not for schools, it's for families.
Sorry, it's my fault. It's called the School Student Broadband Initiative. That's my fault. So it is actually about school students. My fault. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Look, when I first saw this, obviously I thought it was a very interesting initiative. I've worked with the Isolated Children's Parents Association trying to get it out there and get families to take it up. The announcement said there'd be 30,000 families who could access it, but it's had a very, very low uptake. only about 4,000 households to date, is my understanding?
It's just over 4,000, that's correct, yes.
So prior to the announcement by the government, what work did you do with the government and the department to make the estimates, the cost estimates, the estimates of the number of families who might take it up?
It was an election commitment, Senator, so there was no, my team wasn't involved.
So this was an announcement made by the government with a number that they reached by themselves of 30,000 as a commitment that sounded very good. When you read it, you go, "That's fantastic," but in the actual implementation, potentially the demand wasn't as great as.
Well, no, I think. Well, firstly, how it was set, I'll have to take on notice, and we'll see if we can. Because it's not for me. Actually, as I said, there's 4,300 families approximately connected today, and we are now working with 54 different organisations, including Smith Family, Salvation Army, St Vincent de Paul, independent schools, Catholic schools, all state departments actually, except for New South Wales and Tasmania. I should say that members of both the Senate and the
House of Reps.
House.
That other chamber.
I know you always make jokes about. Members of the Senate, it's very late, I'm so sorry. Members of the Senate and the House have actually all been talking about it, so thank you for that. I think that's great. Basically, families have still until April 24 to sign up, and it's a year. It takes a year, it lasts a year. And so there are a lot of bodies now organising this, and also only last week Minister Rowland announced the National Referral Centre, which has been, it was launched last week and it's operated by Anglicare Victoria. And this basically enables people to self-nominate, if you like, and go through a quicker process to actually have access. We have issued a lot of vouchers on this, so what happens, we really help administer, but have no role in nominating families. It's hardly for NBN to do. But when a voucher is issued, then who are eligible families can go and contact their retailer with the voucher and essentially get the school student plan for a year. And it is building momentum, and I hope that we see many families join the scheme. It's where there's a need for school students, there's no better service really in some ways for NBN, Senator. So it is building, it is growing.
Just to Tasmanian government through housing is working to get people connected. So that is, I think you said.
I said otherwise. So sorry if I'm corrected. Yeah. I'm wrong.
So
we're working with. I think maybe it's separate from the Department of Education.
Yes.
So there's involvement from Tasmania as well, great.
So you're working with at least 54 organisations, if not more. 54. And to date, you've only connected 4,000, but you're saying so it's a slow burn.
We're starting.
Do you think it could have been rolled out more efficiently in the first place, or to have those relationships in place in the first place before the announcement was made, and we would have had a much speedier uptake?
You're asking me a policy question, I'm afraid. But what I would say is that there is a lot of effort being gone into from my team, but also from the department to find a way of reaching these families, but not only when they've reached, but also when they get a voucher, but helping them actually to execute and to put that call in and to get the service. And the fact that we've issued 22,000 vouchers indicates that there is demand out there. It's now a case of turning those vouchers into actually families on this scheme and giving kids the education they deserve. That's what it's about.
So what happens? You've got 22,000 vouchers on issue. You've connected 4,000. That's 26,000.
No. That's in the 22. Don't add them. That's within.
That's inclusive. So you've still got 8,000 to go. Do you think you'll get there before the end of 2018? April 24, which is when they've got to have signed up by?
I hope we see, I don't know the number, Senator, but I hope we see a lot more families connect onto this programme, because, as I said, it is important. And, you know, I don't have it here with me, and the time is short, but I've received, you know, I've seen some really lovely messages from parents who are very grateful for the service that their kids have been able to afford through this scheme.
And just what happens after a year when they've had the service for a year, they've got used to free internet, and then at the end of the year, bang, and they might be vulnerable families who can't afford Aussie Broadband's price increases.
Again, that's a question for government, but I do know that they're working that through the department. And
just a last question on a different topic, because I'm always interested in the new technologies that are coming out and the offering in regional Australia. And as Senator Henderson quite rightly pointed out, there are a lot of farmers who are now switching to low Earth orbiting satellites, LEOs, which currently is not offered by NBN. What will that mean for your Sky Muster Plus is doing great guns since all these farmers are moving off it. So that's my little declaration of interest. But what does it mean for NBN with your figures, your connections, or you mentioned in your opening statement you've sort of put out an expressions of interest. Is that to maybe develop partnerships to deliver a service through
so there's a whole pile of things, and I've got the expert on this sitting beside me, but we are expanding our fixed wireless offering. That enables us to take customers off satellite onto fixed wireless. We've issued some unlimited plans on Sky Muster, which, as I said in my statement, has had a great take-up since then, since we launched that. And yes, we are exploring options, and some purely exploring options, but we're exploring options with low-orbit satellite providers for a way to, over time, for us potentially to be able to utilise low-orbit satellites. But Gavin, do you want to talk to all this?
Yeah, sure. So I think, there was a point that was raised about there being lots of hype about the LEO kind of services that are around now, and I agree there is a lot of hype, but sometimes I think it drowns out some of the value proposition of Sky Muster services that have $0 standard install. We support the service with $0 calls if the service goes out, and it's significantly cheaper on a monthly basis. So, I speak to people in regional Australia all the time who are confused about what some of their options are, and there's plenty of independent sources of options like the Regional Tech Hub that people can get in touch with and get an objective test of what's available. And I've got to say, I think you use Sky Muster service. I use the Sky Muster Plus premium service in Victoria as well, and I love it. If you're watching the Rugby World Cup, every grain of glass, every blade of grass, except we lost. You might like watching Taylor Swift videos, or in my case, you spend all day on a video meeting and it doesn't skip a beat. So I think there is, and I think there's another. When you mentioned the ICPA, we keep in touch with those thought leaders in this sector, and I've joined the ICPA group in Darwin as well. So we get lots of positive feedback about the changes we're making. You think about where we were half a decade ago, we used to talk about data drought. And here we are now upgrading fixed wireless service to range speeds up to over 300 megabits per second, pushing the geographic coverage of that service from about 200,000 square kilometres to about 350,000 square kilometres, enabling us to deliver the holy grail for our satellite product, being uncapped data for all internet needs, so the holy grail of avoiding data anxiety. So the fact that there's these options, I think, is a marvellous thing that we didn't have half a decade ago. So we're doing that upgrade to our fixed wireless network. We're pushing the technology in fixed wireless and satellite for everything it's got. And meanwhile, we're looking at opportunities to embrace these emerging technologies down the track as we retire the constellation that we've got in space right now, and that approaches end of life.
Thank you. Thanks.
Chair, if I can sit before again.
Certainly, Senator Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Assistant Minister, I want to return to the Special Access Undertaking announcement. The Minister announced there would be a positive outcome for families, and yet, as you've heard tonight, families are now paying more. What do you say to that? And I refer in particular to the Aussie broadband price increase, which has on average gone up. Plans have gone up by 8%, and for families on the lowest cost plan, who are likely to feel the impact the most, the increase is more than 10%. Doesn't this make a mockery of the Minister's promise?
Well, the evidence that I've heard here tonight is that those plans, the 12-25, have gone down 2%.
No, that's the wholesale price.
I'm talking about
the retail price.
Have I heard tonight the evidence? And
No,
I'm
I'm
telling
asking
you
about the
what
retail
evidence
price.
that I've heard. But as I said, as what has been said here today, is that the decision made to the SAU has established a long-term regulatory framework which will operate until 2040 and will deliver greater price stability, keeping prices in line with inflation and protecting consumers from unexpected price hikes.
If I could stop you there, because I've just on.
We've also heard that the.
Sorry, Sister Minister, I just want to redirect you to the question that I asked. I wasn't asking about wholesale prices. The Minister promised that this would be a positive outcome for Australians, and already within days of the announcement, we've seen Aussie broadband customers being hit with very big price increases. Doesn't this make a mockery of the Minister's promise?
Let's just have a look at.
We're looking, and Australians are very unhappy.
Senator Henderson, let the Minister.
I am.
So the current SAU process started in 2021, but the proposal that was endorsed by the former Liberal National Government would have allowed NBN prices to increase up to 3% plus inflation on some products.
Just hold on a second, Minister. What is your point of order,
I would
Senator
just
Henderson?
ask that you direct the Minister to be directly relevant to my question, which was about retail prices.
It is up to the Minister how she chooses to answer. She is in the broad ballpark of your question, Minister.
The question was about the SAU.
No, it was about the retail
decision,
prices, Assistant Minister.
And
you clearly don't want to answer it. It's embarrassing for the government.
Okay, enough. Thank you.
We've already
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It is Senator Henderson. Senator Henderson, please.
Don't
Minister, come on, people.
Minister.
It's late.
I know. I
There's
just
no
like
need to.
I'd like my question answered.
Senator Henderson, please. We're not going back to this.
Please don't run
We're not going back
interference
to
with the
this.
Assistant
Please,
Minister.
Senator Henderson, it is my call. My call.
Assistant Minister,
my
can you
call.
answer my question, please?
Senator Henderson, it is my call. We have only got a very short period of time left to go, and I would ask that we would all try and behave ourselves for these last 10 minutes. It's not a lot to ask. It's been a long day. And I think going around this issue, appreciate, Senator Henderson, that you are very concerned about these retail prices, these private provider retail prices. I don't know if Senator Brown has that level of detail on this particular issue, or whether she needs to go and find out anything further. I know that the issue came up in the newspapers this morning, but I don't think that
Chair,
everybody talking over each other at this time of night is of any value to any of us. And so I would just say, if we could just stay a little calm. Senator Henderson, you have had the majority of the day asking your questions, and I have let you do that, and I have asked you right now to not take us to the end of the day in this manner. I have asked you very clearly not to do this at the end of the day. We will resume your questioning if you could just stop talking over me.
No, I'm taking
I have
a point of
said
order.
to you before, a point of order does not mean that you can speak over the top of me
No,
I have to
I'm entitled
stop
to be
my
heard.
sentence. I will finish what I am saying and then I will take your point of order. If you could just be
I'm entitled
respectful
to be
of
heard on the
everybody
point
else.
of order at the
You
time I
are
make the
indeed,
point of order under the
yes,
standing
but not
orders.
in the middle of a sentence. I have the right to finish my sentence, Senator Henderson. So please,
Chair.
let us not... If you could stop, we might be able to get
I'm
to your point of order.
entitled to make my point of order under the standing orders.
No one's... Well, if you're obviously not listening to a word I'm saying...
I'm just taking a point of order.
Please.
Could I please make a submission on the point of order? On the point of order, Chair, I have the call. It's appropriate for me to ask the Minister
No, I'd already
questions.
said that you did not have the call, Senator
And
Henderson.
you've
If you'd like to
taken-
check the Hansard later, I said you did not because you were busy talking over the Minister,
You were
and I
running
said you
interference
did
with the
not
Minister.
have the call.
Could I have the call so I could finish my questions, please?
Now, Senator Henderson, there's 9 minutes left to go.
Please don't
If
speak
we
to me
could please
in that way,
try and
Chair.
stay calm and
I'm
try
very
and be
calm.
respectful, I'd be very grateful.
And I'm very respectful
Senator
and I'm very
Henderson,
calm.
you may now ask your
Thank
question.
you. And I would just like, if I could just ask my questions to the Minister and if the Assistant Minister could address them. I'm raising questions about the cost of living pressures on Australians, Assistant Minister. There was a commitment by Minister Rowland that this would lead to a positive outcome for consumers. And what we've seen is very significant price increases. What do you say in response to those price increases that have been announced by Aussie Broadband?
Look, what I can say is it's no wonder that Senator Henderson doesn't want to hear about the current SAU process that started in 2021, because that proposal that was endorsed by the former Liberal National Government would have allowed NBN price increases of up to 3% plus inflation on some products. That proposal was underpinned by unrealistic revenue expectations and a view to privatisation by the Coalition. And shortly after forming government, the Minister wrote to NBN Co and the ACCC outlining the government's preference for a revised SAU
Minister,
proposal to
about
reflect
your
the new
announcement.
government policy, including NBN Co's remaining government ownership. So the decision, which has already been outlined, and there's been plenty of evidence that has been put to this committee by Mr Roux, the NBN CEO, about actual products decreasing.
Thanks very much, Assistant Minister. Mr Rowe, I just want to finally move to the rollout numbers. If you could just, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, if I could just direct you to what appears to be a decrease in the number of Australians taking on the NBN. So it's fallen from 7.22 million to 7.17 million in last week's report. Not a big fall, but there is a downward trend. And of course, there's also a downward trend in relation to Sky Master. Can you provide any assurance or direction in relation to those numbers?
I'm not sure what numbers you're talking to, Sandra, but the number of premises connected to NBN has increased in the last few months, not decreased.
Apologies, it's falling from 7.22 million in June 22. I'm sorry, I misread that. To 7.17 million in last
Sandra,
week's report.
Again, I'm not sure what you're looking at. The number of premises connected to NBN is just under 8.6 million, and it has increased since 30 June, and it has increased over the previous year. It continues to grow, actually. Now, some of that is due to new developments being built, of course.
Yes, I'm looking at the weekly report, and they're the numbers from the weekly report. They're not including the Sky Master numbers, so they're just from your last week's weekly
again,
report.
Without having in front of me, what I can tell you is that there is I think it's, as I said, it's just under 8.6 million premises connected to NBN, as I said in my opening statement, Sandra, and that has increased this year.
And Sky Master,
the Sky Muster numbers are basically flat this year, from memory. Is that correct?
They've flattened in the last.
What is it?
It's just shy of 91,000.
yeah. So the Sky Master numbers were 112,000 at the end of Q3 2021. So is Starlink posing more of a threat to NBN's business, particularly now that Starlink has partnered with Telstra, and you've obviously recognised the importance of low orbit satellite yourselves in looking for that option?
Well, I think in the context of 8.6 million services, then a decline of 20,000 in Sky Muster is it's not a material part of NBN's business plan. The drop from that period includes a range of things. In for sure, it includes customers that have moved to Starlink, but there's also customers that have moved to NBN's own fixed wireless services. We've expanded the service and other competitive services.
It's true as a result of the investment we made when we were in government.
And other there's other technologies available for customers in the bush too, like mobile players are offering bigger plans on their mobile services as well. So we operate in a competitive environment, and I'm pleased as a consequence of largely as the launch of the Sky Muster Plus Premium service in June. We've seen a significant stabilisation in that base, and we've seen people. It's been a sticky service that's now, as Mr. Roos said in his opening statement, more than 25% of our satellite base is on that Sky Muster Plus Premium plan.
There hasn't been a significant change in the number of customers on Sky Muster since 30 June.
Right. That's all of my questions for this evening. Thank you very much for this evening, and apologies that you were delayed in giving your evidence today.
That's okay. We weren't going home anyway tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Root. Thank you, Mr. Williams. We will now. That will be the adjournment. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time.